made the script before the anime and did not see it then, but oh my god, it was amazing. Go watch it. The voices! The voices! Especially Idia's laughter and memeling, they were perfect. Everything was perfect. It was amazing. And sorry if I am chewing and swallowing a little. I am having M&Ms while recording this. To preface this video, I have autism, and probably ADHD, and that's one of the main reasons I've decided to make this video. This video is also kind of in the same vein as my friend Banana Candy Arts Riddle Has OCD video, which I'll try and put in the description if I remember. Also, on a very minor side tangent, look at Idia's new Overbot skin. I have the EN game version, so I won't get it for a year, but that just means a year's worth of savings, because this is insane looking. Just a moment of appreciation for how sick it looks. Also, peak Hercules reference. Let's see. Oh, and the two art pieces you'll be seeing in the general background are both based off of Hollow Knight, one of my all-time favorite video games and made by me. Also, I've gotten into Silksong. I'm at Act 3. But anyways, go play both of them if you want. And I might also add other art pieces, so, whatever. Anyways, let's get back to the subject at hand. Idia Shroud definitely has autism, and why the hell can't I find another video dissecting it? And sure, I know we project ourselves on the character sometimes, and maybe he's just an introvert, but look at him! Look! Just a quick disclaimer before the actual video starts, among the several disclaimers before the actual video starts. I am not a psychologist or in any degree able to diagnose. I have just been diagnosed since ASD since the 6th grade, and I am so freaking old now. So I've grown up with it. So if you're watching the video and think it's similar, probably after this, go find out from a professional. I also have not finished Chapter 6, so I won't really be using it since I've been playing with my friends. I've also leveled up my characters to insanity to the point where I'm only using lessons for the 1,000 lesson gems because I need to save up. Once again, have you seen his overbot? Have you seen? The diagnostic criteria of ASD is defined by the DSM-5 as having differences in social communication and social interactions across multiple contexts. Well, for context, I have a lung condition, so I may be out of breath, which Idia demonstrates in several situations. Since the full definition splits into a bunch of categories and subcategories, I'll be focusing on just A and B, since they're the most fleshed out anyway. C and D are mainly, like footnotes-ish. I have enough screenshots for the whole 5 categories because I'm a hoarder of the moments, even though they're completely replayable and it eats up my storage, but I'll try and keep it short for the video and future me editing this video's sake. You poor soul, future me. Speaking of, I'm going to use the vignettes as general examples and go down the ones I haven't covered just with screenshots alone. And I will try and be as clinical as I can with this, since if you're still watching, you're either interested, low chance, a friend of mine, very high chance, or not convinced by any dialogue this man has. Plus, neurotypical people don't tend to break the fourth wall, especially not the same degree of pizzazz. Quick side note here, you cannot convince me he doesn't play some variety of TTRPG. I mean, boarding club, come on. But that's a thing I do, so it's only like 60% projecting, because I previously stated, board game club. Also, so some evidence to prove this, even though it's not going to be in the video, maybe. Idias will recognize bards. They recognize bards! The first subcategory of A, so aptly titled A1, not like the state, states that the person has deficits in social-emotional reciprocity, aka the introvert part. This basically sums up to a different social approach, reductions of open emotion/sharing, and failure to take part in social interactions. Boy, howdy, that is something that Idia and me myself fit in perfectly. As shown in Idia's birthday and gym vignettes, or short stories focusing on the character, as well as in the Glorious Masquerade and several other events, he very clearly shows deficits in social-emotional reciprocity. In the birthday event, which I could legitimately use for everything, but to show variety I'll be using other sources, Idia shows almost all of Category A by stating that he is hyped that Riddle abhors small talk as much as he does, which is genuinely, if not slightly, a stereotypical trait. No comment on my end. I'm not great at handling small talk either, and we'll get to his speech patterns later. 2 sentences later, he shows the quote-unquote failure to engage in social events by saying the true introvert answer of, "Where would you like to go?" being his room. Touche, idiot, touche. Then Real pressures him, so he gives a quote-unquote proper answer, but him providing the room answer gives a convenient escape to the social interaction, even though he seems to greatly enjoy info-dumping his second answer and reasoning to Riddle, which is a social difference if I've ever seen one. And, yep, checks out on my end. To be fair, he's giving an answer to the question, just going in depth a lot of it, which I feel would not be very necessary, would not be felt necessary by a neurotypical. Also, it's Loader, which is amazing. Lord of the Rings, for the acronym I meant. Frankly, I'm not going to do much editing, so you're all going to have to go with the voice I'm giving this, because it's been way too long. I went to a behavioral psychologist a while back to become more sociable and stuff, and one of the major points of conversation I learned was to aim for the forest, not the trees. I honestly feel like this is where I kind of started masking a little, but it overall helped me make my points known a lot and be more concise with information, which is pretty much doing the opposite of here. And it's the same with Idia, as he completely goes down the rabbit hole. Okay. With Riddle on the topic of rip-off Lord of the Rings. I also wanted to visit New Zealand one day for the exact same reason. I'm not kidding. Mainly for the Hobbit house, but the cliffs look gorgeous. And also they've allowed cute animals there, and also, like, it's very nice. But I'm scared of flights and heights, so that's very unlikely. I'm gonna go on a bit of a tangent too. Viggo Mortensen, aka Aragorn, decided to climb it for the cinema, while I forget it's Gimli or Legolas, one of them climbed it. No, I think it was Boromir. He climbed it because he was so scared of heights, he would not go on a helicopter. He climbed it bare. He was going to die if he fell. Still climbed it. Alright, back to the thing. Let's see. He also sighs before going on to the topic, and deep breaths have proven to be a great coping mechanism for unwanted situations from personal experience. This also demonstrates his special interest in media, but I'll leave that for later. Going to his gym uniform, Idia has decided to study Jack in order to get better at running, but instead of asking to watch, Idia instead basically stalks him, avoiding failing to initiate a social interaction again. When Reggie startles him and asks what he's doing, Idia can't form a coherent response, furthermore highlighting social interactions, especially when not prepared, are difficult for him. Honestly though, if I recall in the exact situation, I could not do better. You just got caught stalking, dude. Even if it was not for the, stalking reasons. Even though I am sort of hounding on about the social interaction aspect, I just wanted to add the aspect of the social smile in A1, which is smiling back when smiled at. That's not, I read something in the script. I'm keeping that in, by the way, just so you know that I'm not good at this. This is not smiling. Moving on. And just as the cherry on top here, in the Glorious Masquerade event, which in my opinion is the coolest outfits, even though Idia kinda looks like Big Bird, he's terrified to dance or attend the social event in general. In the second subcategory, A2, the manual focuses on nonverbal communication. In the second subcategory, A2, the manual focuses on nonverbal communication, such as differences in or lack of eye contact, facial expressions, and subconscious communication factors. Although Twisted Wonderland typically uses very dynamic and expressive expressions to denote characters' in their default states, he is typically shown with a more muted and unique set of poses. These range from him having a neutral, prolonged, and more downcast true default, expression for a large part of the game, something I've been told I have as well sometimes, to him having different and more exaggerated gestures when truly animated, like him raising both arms when most only raise one. Also, look at his lopsided smile. Do you see that? That is not a neurotypical smile. Update on that. It turns out, that's a physical thing, not like a neurodivergent thing. I have it too. Yeah. What I mean by that is that there's some studies that link looser muscle tension, especially around the face, to autism, which should explain why I too cannot smile quote-unquote properly for the life of me. Oh hey, I did that in the script already. It's a blunder. I'm keeping it in. I'm not gonna have like enough people watching this to like actually change it, and I'm finally getting it done. So, you know what? Back to the thing. Finally, he also tends to retract into himself when scared, with him simultaneously not showing much facial change, also supporting this aspect. And he holds his hands behind his back in like a sort of resting position in one of the poses, which I also find like pretty nice. Furthermore, the subsection has a heavy emphasis on eye contact and being able to convey emotion towards words, as well as the volume and all of the other fancy words for vocal specifics. Since all the sprites are forward-facing and in the same general pose, it's hard to convey a lack of eye contact in-game, as well as all the characters facing the screen. However, in a few lines from his school and gym home screen cards, he ends the dialogue by deliberately looking away from the screen, showing an uncomfortability with maintaining eye contact. Even more so, in the Halloween event, Idia is the only person to conceal his face fully, in a pumpkin nonetheless, which if we're really pulling out straws here is because pumpkins in Minecraft help avoid eye contact with Enderman, and Idia strikes me as a Minecraft player. And for vocal specifics, in Idia's Labor vignette, he scares Grim with his difference in tone and volume, making Grim mistake him for a ghost, and subsequently having both of them freak out respectively. Oh, and end of script me here. There's an entire dialogue about Idia being horrible at eye contact, so I did not have to do some Minecrafty mental gymnastics, even though that wasn't really the point, but whatever. The third and final subcategory of A, referred to as A3, which wholly focuses on gaining or maintaining relationships with people, which Idia does not have a lot of. Although he seems to be somewhat known and relatively like acknowledged by most students, like in Epel's dorm vignette, he lacks the closest that many other of the Twist characters have with each other. In fact, outside of Ortho, all situations involving multiple people in Idia's vignettes are all things Idia prefers to avoid, deliberately stating, "Why did I step foot outside?" in his Soom Sir vignette when forced to look with Vil for Sooms, and later on in the same vignette stating he's uncomfortable with other people being in his room besides Ortho, which can both be used to infer him having very few real-life friends, especially since he can be inferred to stay in or around his room at all times. Especially since in Book 1 for student orientation, he had deferred from leaving his room and instead built a drone to go in his stead. An entire drone. For that purpose. One of the criterion is also not having friends in your age level, which means he does only have one friend. He's just 700 years old and they only know each other online. Hey, it's Tumblr pretty well. Furthermore, in the subsection of absence of interest in others, it is stated, you know what, I'm just going to put up here, his canonical pet peeve is avoiding conversations. So I don't think that needs further explanation. And if I don't put it up there, then also, I got Idia's celebratory robes in the middle of the script, so I'll just add this here. Wow, that was a while ago. I'm sorry, I did not do the script soon enough. Video, I'm sorry. For the subject of not being able to make friends, literally got physically ill at the prospect of being in front of people for orientation. That's real, dude. Sorry about that. Although as a bit of a counterpoint here, Idia does know when to stop venting when Riddle shows up, so he knows what to do in social situations. He's just horrible with crowds and stuff. Glad he knows his limits, good for him, and tells Riddle he can't without Ortho as emotional support. He actually tells Riddle off when he doesn't have to face him, when he doesn't have to be face to face with him, and same. Absolutely same. I cannot talk to people emotionally in person, but over text it doesn't matter how livid I am, to an extent, obviously, but still, I absolutely get it. Also, Riddle, chill out, man. You can't just yell at Idia like that. It's not given to him, so get some therapy and stop listening to your evil mom. Don't pressure the autistic kid on doing something he physically is pretty much unable to do. He honestly did a real good job defending himself to Riddle. And Idia style is exactly the way I thought about the way I went about life before I got diagnosed, because my frame of reference is not the same as other people's. Heading back as I read part 2, both Idia and Malleus have no clue whatsoever on what the other is talking about, and when Idia says something snippy because he's too stressed to filter it, Malleus, on the other hand, has no clue whatsoever what's going on. But since they both think the other is talking about the same thing, Idia ends up thinking Malleus is mocking him and runs away, but Malleus is still so socially unaware He assumes it's normal and is chill about that. This honestly makes them both qualify for A3, with Malleus being more low needs than Idia, meaning that he needs less. I do also headcanon Malleus as somewhere on the spectrum as well. That's another video entirely. Poor Idia, though, that vignette was rough. And, if you felt like you've ran enough already, the second category, B, focuses on restrictive and repetitive patterns of behavior, interests, or activities. Unlike A, which requires all three subcategories to be accurate, only 2 out of the 4 subcategories need to be met in order for B to be acknowledged. However, I can definitely see Idia for qualifying for all the subcategories easily. And when I mean easily, I mean easier than the special event battles. So for the uninitiated, very, 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 very easy. Without further ado, let's get started on those. B1, as a subcategory, specializes in repetitive speech patterns or movements, and if you think Idia doesn't display this to a monumental degree, I don't think you've played Twisted Wonderland, and if you haven't, I'm going to tell you. First off, for the speech pattern repetition, it states that one aspect of this is jargon, or words used by a specific group that can be hard for others to understand. I'll just put some examples up here, FYI. By the way, I do think the internet lingo still qualifies as a form of jargon, since Idia is one of the only people to excessively use it. I think being chronically online to that degree would make him part of a group of basement dwellers. Seriously, he needs more sun. He looks like a sick Victorian child. He looks more like a sick Victorian child than Riddle. And that's saying something. Also, this is conveyed so well in the anime. Thank you! Thank you, Idia VA! Let's see. Another aspect of this is the intonational noise making, which can be shown by one of his level up dialogues on his cards, with him saying dun dun dun, mimicking fanfare and adding a celebratory tone to the phrasing. He also defaults to formal addressing when talking to people, for instance calling Malleus Mr. Malleus in a few vignettes. I mean, he's technically an adult, so. Speaking in jargon, in the part 2 of the celebratory vignette, Idia starts panicking in the terms of the gamer lingo, which shows it's an automatic reaction. He also uses slow, deep breaths to calm himself after, which is a very effective strategy for refocusing and not getting overwhelmed. Good for him! And as I was reading the culinary vignette while searching for evidence, I found even more evidence of the stress jargon while cooking. This can't not be canon! The second part of B1, repetitive or stereotyped motor movements, is probably the hardest to definitively see, especially since we can't really tell in game. This requires one of my least favorite activities in this regard: research. Funny thing is, I'm going into the sciences, so I'm probably a little screwed in that regard, but I know a place where I can at least probably find an answer is gym vignette. So I couldn't find anything, but there were some fun references and an insane burn on the Gaston character. So, I guess that part's out. Finally, the last part of B1 is the repetitive and stereotyped usage of objects, which also, unfortunately, I have nothing for. If I looked more diligently, I could probably find something, but I'm just making this as a passion project, so I can afford to be a little lazy. Let's see. I mean, technically uses his devices a lot. Finally, but trust me, everything else covers this way better. Finally, we get to P2, and for this one, I'm a little iffy on, but a section that he definitely falls under here is rigid thinking. And boy, is his thinking style rigid. From my own personal experiences, having a rigid and opinionated mindset can lead to some problems, which I've had some struggles with in the past. Not going into my personal life too much, however, Idia's quote-unquote stage fright confines him to his room to an extreme extent, even beyond his introverted nature. Idia fully believes in his ceremonial vignette that he's going to a catch-22 situation for him, that when Malleus genuinely asks him, oh, why is he wearing the robe, since he's never been informed of a meeting due to a series of unfortunate events, Idia has some kind of emotional overload, either a panic attack or a shutdown, and runs away to his room as he thinks Malleus is belittling him, confirming his worst fears. He also exhibits a lack of understanding of social cues previously in the ceremonial event, where he tells off Riddle when he doesn't have to see him face to face, which qualifies for the rigid thinking category too. I was going to use the Glorious Masquerade as a second example here, but apparently that happens after, so oh well. I'm saying like after in the example stuff, I don't want to like overuse it, even though I just use it twice, so Another example of this, although a bit far-fetched, is the inability to recognize Lilia as Muscle Red. They know each other's birthdays, and probably each other's talking styles at that point as well. But the fact that Idia knows Lilia and Muscle Red's birthdays are the same, and most likely has similar talking patterns, shows his rigid thinking and his separation of his online and physical world. Like I said, it's a bit far-fetched, but I also want to finish the script as reasonable. But I also want to finish the script as a reasonable date, so bogus reasons it is. As if I'm finishing this like a year after I wrote this. Not a year, but like a solid 6 months. Finally, Edie is slightly grumpy at the start of Book 6 because the events in the chapter landed on the event time of his favorite characters card rerun, which shows at least a hyperfixation, if not a special interest. By the way, he's not concerned about them being kidnapped. He wanted his character pulled. Valid. Now, for the good stuff. B3, as stated by Big Psychology, is highly restricted, fixated interests that are abnormal in intensity and focus. Oh, that's the reason I made this video, because I have one of those. But Idia definitely has a lot of special interests, or at least hyperfixations, such as video gaming, primo, anime, and, engineering, which is how he made Ortho. Imagine creating a fully functioning AI that makes humanity almost perfectly while you were a teenager, for 2 years. And Ortho has feelings! We haven't made an AI with feelings, and this depressed teenager made it from scratch. No wonder he's the head of Styx. Just on a side tangent, I feel like traumatic experiences can affect autistic people more than others. For instance, I got a bug in my ear a few years back, and I still don't go outside without headphones mostly, especially in buggy areas. In my defense, it really hurt, but still. Also, now that I'm saying that, hey, personal growth, I'm getting better at it, so yay! This reflects on Idia's decision to become a recluse, since the sort of barrier between him and others was amplified by the trauma he experienced. Especially because the only person he can be friends with is the exact copy of his dead brother. Idia's passion for technomantic engineering can also overlap with his hobby of PC gaming, as one of the reasons the dorm is kept cold is so all the Ignite students' custom PCs don't overheat, as stated in the Fairy Gala event. He also seems to be more active in the animated world, in the online world, to the point where he actually makes a friend in Lilia, meanwhile finding him in real life terrifying, because it's Lilia. Speaking of video gaming, he uses metaphors about gaming to reflect on his life, like how I started using canonically in my real-life communication patterns. Thanks, Idia. Genuinely, though, I find it very fun. Speaking of, since I just read through more of Chapter 6 with my friends, the incredibly clear difference between Idia's online persona, thoughts, and facial expressions clearly show a distinct diagnosis of autism in and of itself. But, focusing on B3, which shows a massive increase in communication and appreciation over talking face-to-face online, with him even complimenting Lilia directly, which he never does to any character face-to-face outside of Ortho, who we know doesn't really have a face. When asked about certain topics that he enjoys, such as the aforementioned rant about faux Lord of the Rings with Riddle, he can, as the official description states, get unusually talkative and animated. Not really sure how to articulate this besides just saying that's autistic behavior, but that's autistic behavior. For the final example, he has a special interest or hyperfixation on some kind on the band Primo, which is based off the three fates yeah, dang it. It's 3 minutes and more seconds, I can't stop it, guys. Which is based off the three fates, by the way, even knowing chants for songs. So, Edie is a Miku fan. I am also a bit of a Miku fan. Everyone listen to Miku. Also, let's not forget he's in the board game club too, and literally says talking to others while playing board games is easier. Just saying. Also, it's very relatable. Yeah, absolutely. Wow, it feels weird taking a month-long script break. Oh, does it past me? No, yeah, in fact, we are taking a 3-month script break. And yeah. So now I'm here. But finally, in B4, we have sensory issues. And aside from Idia being blinded from outside the light, he definitely falls into that category. He's a very picky eater, which I definitely was when I'm little, and partially still am, More accurately, he prefers sweets over all food, specifically candy. This could be linked to ARFID in some capacity, but I don't really have the research or credentials to look into that, especially so late into the project where I don't want to edit the script anymore. So I try to give him the sweetest food items when I can. Sorry, dude. Well, in the cooking events I do. Even though he doesn't like them. Why must you not like the cake? It's sweet! Also for Idia, the only time his hair is adjusted in any way is with his Phantom Bread card, which is also a sensory issue along the line of cutting or altering hair, nails, or brushing teeth. He actually also has this in Halloween, but I don't think it's as drastic as the basically mohawk he had. So that's it for A and B, and you can see the comprehensive evidence besides just vibes. But moving on to the proof he's a nerd virgin in general, just look at his chats. In his second chat, he talked about Cerberus and about how much he admired it as a kid. When he hears other people don't feel the same, he just responds with, "Man, sometimes I just don't get how normies think." He's too relatable in this to be neurotypical, and he calls people normies. There are two types of people to call others normies, and his self-esteem's in Tartarus, so it's definitely the neurodivergent way. In his third chat, he talks about how he envies the king of the underworld's ability to be good at talking to people, which is sad. He talks about how he can speedrun dating sims to try and relate. Oof, dude. I mean, suppose fictional characters are easier to read, not easier to read, since they're static people, so that makes sense. Speaking of being easier to relate, Idia loves animals, specifically cats, and Cerberus produces a dog. Although I'm more of a dog person in general, having an affinity for animals in general, two generals, yay, is a neurodivergent trait according to several studies and resources. He even says, "Kitty," in class regarding Lucius, which if my teacher brought in a cat, I'd definitely say too. Now, heading back to the vignettes to list out everything I missed. He states in his Birthday Bloom vignette that he doesn't study in the traditional sense, and rather uses the format as something he enjoys, coding and video games, to educate himself instead. Speaking of games, he appreciates the chessboard that Leonard got him with his birthday jacket vignette, a bit less so when he realizes it was a re-gift. He also thinks it would be better off as decorative, as he plays with particular pieces. I think it's like a hollow chess situation. He states it's a huge diff in motivation, which is evidence for that being routine-based, for that being like a routine-based behavior. But then states they're hard to hold, so it could also be a texture-based thing, or just the pieces are too bulky for his weak little nerd hands. He also goes into a rant in the second part about who he'd pick, unless they have, who'd he, oh, yeah, I forgot I was there. But he goes through a random in the second part about who he'd pick for what, I don't know, and lists the electronic activities he would miss. And he mentions sensitive files, which is definitely just book 6 spoilers, but still, the search history allegations are hilarious, and he has them. He definitely has them. I mean, he's 18, I don't know. And the whole vignette is him running through everyone to see who'd be best, which Leona respectfully listens to ads. That's more than enough to answer the question. He also states Jamil didn't talk with him unnecessarily in terms of small talk. So from this, I think I was talking about him going on a trip with someone. Don't quote me. And for his birthday boy vignette, he hates the texture and style scheme of the clothing and wants to change as soon as possible. He also mentions how he dislikes strangers telling him happy birthday, although he mentions the good video game events from birthdays. Meta much! He also states he hates the texture of raw fish, but enjoys making candy sushi, since it finds it fun even though it can be considered for kids. Once again, texture issues. Also, he wears headphones all the time to cancel out noise. Why even make this video? It's just canon. He wears them everywhere, except like the special events and stuff. But he wears them almost everywhere. Should I even look up his birthday boy vignette? Otherwise, I could have added this sooner. Moving on, he then proceeds to info dump about Primo, or the band that the Three Fates of the World makeup that I mentioned earlier. He also possibly stims while listening to it. I don't have evidence here. I probably do somewhere. I mean, I don't know. He also states that he shifted to chance games to play with Ortho, but now it's the opposite due to Ortho being a sentient supercomputer. Specifically Ortho teaching him. He plays D&D. He has to play D&D. He also says his social battery is drained, which I also, occasionally, which I also say, but that might just be an introvert thing. Which I also say. Dang it, I get it all wrong. It's 3 minutes in. You know what? Just redo. He also says social battery is drained, which I also say, but that might just be an introvert thing. He enjoyed the messages online more than in real life, and Muscle Red, even gave him a rare weapon in the video game, which is nice. He also states that he's nicer when communicating through his tablet, which I am absolutely the same, like, with random people. It's so much easier to think through an online lens than real conversation. Huh? I wonder why. And now, moving on to why Idia is a great rep. And don't worry, seeing this video's timeline, I will try and keep this short. There's 2 things I'd like to mention beyond him just being relatable. Authenticity and respect. In the game, he may fit a large amount of criterion, but it's never used against him. Aside from people referring to him as an introvert, none of them comment about his traits rudely except for from the place of wanting him to touch grass. I mean, they kind of do, but it's like out of place of general, like, not specifically insulting him because of the trait, just saying, oh, you have this trait. In terms of authenticity, Idia is written almost naturally, and almost conveys the entirety of the disorder. And it's not portrayed as something wholly negative or something entirely good, or that he's not human. As an example of the negative, let's take music from Sia's music. First of all, it was awful. I didn't even watch it, and I know it was awful. Secondly, and more exactly, the movie does not give music any agency, as she is not in any ways to communicate despite being nonverbal. Instead focuses on her sister dealing with her. Yikes. But this video is about Idia, so keep this brief and move on to the next one. For the entirely good aspect, it's significantly more rare than a negative perspective, but can still result in harsh expectations that might be impossible to live up to. Sheldon Cooper from The Big Bang Theory is one of these examples, being portrayed as almost super genius with some lack of social skills. The problem with this portrayal, however, is that Sheldon's autism is seen more as a quirky superpower rather than a disability. It's also used to excuse him for being a complete ass to people. Because even though autism is a mental difference, since it's neurodivergent, society was not built for it, which causes difficulties in daily life that Sheldon does not portray well. Mainly because it's played off for laughs, thus creating a stigma of autism just being quirky when it can be an issue in daily life, ranging from person to person. And for the not human aspect, we'll have to mention the probably most hated portrayal of autism that I know of, Sean Murphy from The Good Doctor. But there are entire essays on that, so I'll just leave it to the people who've already discussed that. All in all, ASD is a complex disability. It's never wholly negative or positive, but it's mostly unique to each person since it's simply a difference in how their mind works and processes things. And most importantly, it doesn't make anyone inhuman. He's not being made fun of, he's treated as a human being, and he goes well with the fandom. In conclusion, he is a great rep for autism, intentional or, well, at this point I can definitely say it's intentional, because literally the entire video. Once again, thank you so much to Yana Sobiso, Twist Coders, English dub writers, Idia's VA, I don't know how to pronounce his name, sorry, and everyone who worked on the game, and thank you so much for the rep. I've had a lot of fun playing it. I can't wait for Chapter 8. The Crow Man. He's cool. Oh, I have it down here. Also, Koi Dao. I'm so sorry if I butchered your name. But thank you so much for voicing Upsala, and also just all the Twist Gays for being awesome and extremely talented. And thanks for everyone for watching. Have an amazing day. Thank you so much. Don't really think I talked about it. Idia, and sorry if I did. Idia can also go nonverbal sometimes, I believe, and communicate by tablet, which I think is like very cool. Specifically when I think it's when Cater, Callium, and like everyone else sort of gang up on him, he resorts to his tablet before like managing to whisper a little. But he's very clearly overwhelmed and thus uses the tablet, which is something he's familiar with, to express himself more properly, which I get so much. Like, even though I'm not nonverbal, just using the phone is so much better to just like use in tense situations. And yeah, thank you so much for watching.